So Will, thank you so much for being with us today. I know that you don't often get off the farm or you don't choose to go on the big speaking circuit. So this virtual experience really created a new opportunity for us. We're grateful for you being here with us today. Will is a fourth generation cattleman who tends the same land that his great-grandfather settled in 1866. Born and raised at White Oak Pastures, Will left home to attend the University of Georgia School of Agriculture, where he was trained in the industrial farming methods that had taken hold after World War II. In 1995, Will made the audacious decision to return to the farming methods his great-grandfather had used 130 years before. Since Will has successfully implemented these methods, these changes, he's been recognized all over the world as a leader in humane animal husbandry and environmental sustainability. Will is the immediate past president of the board of directors of Georgia Organics. He's the beef director of the American Grass-Fed Association and was selected the 2011 Business Person of the Year for Georgia by Small Business Administration. So I know, Will, I know farmers in our network have asked to have you present at Oak for years now, and we're just so pleased that you can connect with us virtually. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to hand it over.
Well, thank you, Brooke. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'll make a disclaimer or two before I start. One is this will probably almost certainly be the least polished presentation you have during this entire conference. This is going to be way more of a discussion than it is a presentation. When they asked me to do this,
Oh, hold on, Will. I think you got muted.
Here we go.
I told you it would be the least professional, polished presentation you had, so I just want to get it kicked off correctly. So that's what we just did. When they asked me to do this, and I found out that I could do it from the farm, I was happy to do it. They asked me about what my honorarium was, and I told them I would not charge you for what is not worth much. So I'm just happy to be here and tell you my story. White Oak Pastures is our family farm in Bluffton, Georgia. Bluffton is in the coastal plains of Georgia. It's about 80 miles to the Gulf of Mexico, right over there. It's a multi-generational, multi-species, vertically integrated farm. Today, we pasture raise 5 different red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits. And we hand butcher them here on the farm in a USDA inspected slaughterhouse that I built. We pasture raise 5 different poultry species: chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, ducks. And we hand butcher them in a separate USDA inspected poultry slaughterhouse that I built here on the farm. We raise certified organic vegetables, pastured eggs, honey, and a number of other little ancillary businesses that support the organism that we think of White Oak Pastures as being. And, factory or organism, we are an organism. A little bit about the history. My great-grandfather came here in 1866, ran the farm, built the farm. His son, my grandfather, ran the farm. In the post-World War II era, my father took over. And that's when sweeping changes were made. Prior to World War II, the farm operated, I think, probably remarkably similar to the way we operate today. Multi-species, slaughter on the farm, sold the products directly to consumers. My father's generation and mine made what I consider to be the great changes. I think of it as industrialized, commoditized, and centralized agriculture. And we can talk a lot about each one of those, but in that era, we became a monoculture of only cattle, and we were part of the system. We were no longer vertically integrated. We We sold calves to the, well, I did operate a feedlot here on the farm for years. We sold calves into the industrial system. And you know, that change, that huge change was made for good reason. You know, Europe was starving post-World War II. There was a need for cheap, abundant, safe food.
Hey, Will. Will, this is Brooke. I know you have some beautiful slides and some pictures. We're not seeing them. Could you do a screen share there with us?
Let me get my technical assistant, who's also my daughter, Jenny.
Hey, Jenny, thanks.
Sure. All right, so we're gonna share the screen.
Okay, and while this is getting set up, let's do this quick poll. This is a great way to let us know real time who's in the room and if you have livestock or if you would like to have livestock. So it's a long one there. If you're dreaming and scheming, you do the would like to have, and you scroll down a little bit there and you can let us know what you actually have on the land already. So I'll leave that open just for a couple more minutes. And yeah, those pictures are too good not to share, Will. Thanks for that.
Okay. So I guess what strikes me about the farm story is how in the 155 years that my family has run the farm, it's come full circle from a farm that was focused on the animals and the land and the local rural community to being focused on industrial production, and back now to focus on the land, the animals, and the local rural community. You know, I was saying earlier that the changes, the industrialization, commoditization, centralization, made food, it was wildly successful. It did everything it was supposed to do. The changes were made to make food cheap, abundant, and safe, and it made food, I believe, obscenely cheap and wastefully abundant and safe only in a very current sense of the meaning of the word. What we have done now is shift the focus back to three basic tenets. Regenerative land management is our goal to make our land better and better and better. The welfare of our animals, to give them a life in which they can express instinctive behavior and a death that's without pain and panic. And then the local rural community, re-enriching the local community. The first two changes were very, very intentional. My father was a very successful monocultural industrial cattleman. He ran the farm from post-World War II until the 70s or 80s. I went to the University of Georgia, graduated in 1976 in animal science. I came home and ran the farm. In fact, I made it even more industrial, commodity, and centralized. And I ran the farm that way for 20 years and paid taxes every year. When I made my decision to change the way I farm, it was not driven by economics. We were doing fairly well financially. Again, never didn't pay taxes, didn't have any debt. I made my decision because I was enjoying my raising cattle less and less. As I approached my 40s, I was increasingly aware of the unintended consequences of the very linear production model I was part of, and just started pulling away from it. I didn't intend to change the farm to the extent we have. I was just moving away from the linear model. The first thing that I became disenchanted with was the animal welfare. What I thought was good animal welfare all my life seemed like less and less to me that it was the thing I ought to be doing. You know, shipping 100, 500-pound calves from my farm to Nebraska or somewhere was not pleasing to me. Later, so the first thing I did was to change the animal welfare. I had believed, been raised to believe and educated to believe that good animal welfare meant you keep the animals well fed, well watered, within a comfortable temperature range, and you don't intentionally inflict pain and suffering on them. And if you did that, then it was a reasonable animal welfare. I came to believe that that's not enough. You know, the animals need an environment in which they can express instinctive behavior. You know, cows were meant to roam and graze, sheep, hogs were meant to root and wallow, chickens were meant to scratch and peck. And if I didn't give them those opportunities, it's not good animal welfare. It's a low level of stress 24/7. So we changed the model. Later, and I gave up confinement feeding of grain. At that time, we were a monoculture of cattle. Gave up hormone implants, gave up ionophores, subtherapeutic antibiotics. Later, I focused more on the land and decided that the things I was doing to my land were equally as displeasing. So I gave up tillage, I gave up chemical fertilizers, gave up pesticides, and relearned how to graze my cattle. The third change, third area of importance I mentioned is the re-enrichment of this rural community of Bluffton, and that was unintentional. The first two were very intentional. The land and the animals were intentional changes. When I made those changes, the farm changed dramatically. I went from 3 employees, about $1 million worth of live cattle sales a year, to today, we have 176 employees. We're the largest private employer in the county. And those changes, and we sell about $20 million worth of product a year. Those changes changed the town. You know, the town had been rendered just irrelevant by the industrial model that we were farming under. When we brought 100 and something people to Bluffton, Georgia, paid them well, they needed a place to eat and drink and sleep and shop, and the town became relevant again. And today, Bluffton, Georgia has gone from a ghost town 15 years ago to a really nice, pleasant little village. It's a tiny little village, but it's very, very nice here. And we're very, very proud of that impact. Our farm writes payroll checks for $100,000 every Friday in a town that doesn't have much over 100 people in it. So the economic impact is something that we're very proud of. I mentioned that it was a monoculture. Our farm was a monoculture of cattle, and I had to relearn how to graze. You know, today the farm is 3,200 acres. It's divided up into a little over 130-ish acre paddocks. And we move cattle in the growing season every day. And the growing season in the coastal plains of Georgia is about 10 months a year. So cattle are constantly on the move. When I gave up chemical fertilizers and pesticides, the monoculture broke down. I realized I needed other species. You know, nature abhors a monoculture. A monoculture does not exist in nature, and there's reasons for that. There is symbiosis. So the first thing that I started to notice is that when I quit using herbicide on the pastures, I had a lot of undesirable plant species. So I brought sheep on the farm. And thank goodness by that time I brought sheep on the farm. My father was not involved. He would not have let me do that. He called them pasture maggots. But sheep are very important to us here. Later, I realized that I needed the impact that comes from other species. We brought poultry on the farm. We brought hogs on the farm. And in doing that, not only did I make the ecosystem healthier so that I didn't need those industrial tools, but it also gave us other products to sell. When I moved from the industrial model to the vertically integrated model that we operate today, I made the mistake that so many farmers make is I focus solely on production. You know, how do I raise beef only in those days without those industrial tools? And I had to figure it out, and I did. And I continued to sell my cattle, live cattle, in the industrial model. And that did not work economically. You know, I was adding value to my grass-fed beef, humanely raised, no hormones, no antibiotics, no GMOs, ... But selling into the commodity market, I couldn't extract the added value I was putting into them, and the economic model didn't work. So that forced me to vertically integrate more and add the processing. You know, consumers don't buy hogs and cows and sheep. They buy beef and pork and lamb. So I had to convert it so I wouldn't have to go into the commodity market, so I could monetize it and extract the additional value I was putting into the product. So I built the processing plants. And that model worked for a while. And then I realized that selling into the wholesale market was not going to work for me. I couldn't extract enough margin from it. So we started our online store and order fulfillment through FedEx and UPS. And that's the model we're operating on today. You know, I'm often asked about scale. What scale is proper? And I'm of the opinion that any scale can work fine as long as you keep processing, production, processing, and marketing all come to coordinated with each other. You know, I think of it as three legs on a stool: production, processing, and marketing. As long as the three legs are operating properly, it can be a low scale or high scale. It's only when one gets ahead of the other that it tips over. And I see that happen a lot. A marketing tool that I relied on very heavily in the early days was certifications. And we've had just about every certification that you can have, and we still have a lot of them. But I am really increasingly disenchanted with certifications. Certifications has become an industry. And when the first certifications came out, I thought, this is great. This is going to allow me to introduce myself to the consumer without having to really do a lot of communicating who we are and what we do. And it worked for a little while. But today, you can get a certification for every shade of gray from snow white to smut black. And that has devalued, in my mind, what certifications can do for the farmer. We still have a bunch of them, but you know, consumers walk in and they see a product and say, oh, well, that's certified. And it's fine. And some of the certifications are such low-hanging fruit that the consumer is just hopelessly confused. And you know, even I that focuses on it don't know what a lot of those certifications mean. I was asked to say a little bit about the grazing. You know, everybody's got a name for the kind of grazing they do: rotational grazing, amp grazing, on and on. And it's fine. You know, as long as the fundamentals are there and you do it properly, it's fine. Doing it properly for me means animals continually on the move. What we do here is what we consider to be biomimicry, or the emulation of nature. We have a really hard animal impact and then a very long recovery time. You know, it harkens back to the era of buffalo bunched together for protection from predators moving across the landscape. Out in the wolves or bears or whatever predators behind them in a slow chase, picking off the old or pre-existing conditions. That sounds a little bit like COVID-19 to me, but that's what was happening. And the impact on the land would have been a really hard impact. Those bison bunched together, eating, urinating, defecating, those cloven hooves, pressing that plant material, urine, feces into the soil. And that's what we do here. And you know, I hear a lot of talk about how hard the impact should be. That's situational. It depends on the kind of forage you're growing. But what's important is a really hard impact and a long recovery time. The same is true with the other species. We move sheep the same way, the poultry. Animals move at different rates. The cattle, sheep, goats move every day. Chickens move once a week. Hogs move as needed. And I call it prescriptive grazing. The forage here in our farm is for the entire farm's in warm season perennial grasses. That's what we're good, and forbs. That's what we're good at in the coastal plain. I think it's locked down.
I'm just gonna turn it off if that's good.
Okay, that's fine. We're having a little PowerPoint problem, and we're gonna get rid of that. So I'm back. I think I mentioned before, the farm is currently 3,200 acres here, divided up into about 100, a little over 100, 30-ish acre paddocks. The warm season, it's all in warm season perennials and forbs. But every October, we oversee the entire farm with a cocktail mix of cool season annuals. We have a 20-foot John Deere 1590 grain drill. We plant a cereal like ryegrass, a brassica, dicot radish this year, and crimson clover. Very little cool season perennials here. We do have some white Dutch clover that comes back. And we're blessed in that we are able to graze about 10 months a year with the warm season perennials and the cool season annuals. During the period that we feed hay, about 60 days or so, we will choose a paddock or paddocks that we think need hard animal impact. In most cases, that would be a newly acquired piece of ground. A newly acquired piece of ground here is usually land that has been industrially farmed with corn, cotton, peanuts in rotation, but monoculturally for as long as I am old, and I'm very old. that farming system really degrades the land. The land we acquire will be about 0.5% organic matter, no microbial activity, very high specific gravity, very dense. The water won't percolate very well. So during the 2 months that we feed hay, we'll feed the herd hay in the new ground that needs the animal impact. We feed the hay in a way that's wasteful. We put it on the ground. They eat. They back on the buffalo. A lot of pushing hay into the ground, wasted hay, but it really jump starts the land. I call it hay bombing. Then next spring we'll plant an annual there. Then later on plant perennials there. It's a very effective way of managing land. The land here, our farm, has gone from 0.5% organic matter to 5% organic matter over a 20-year period. There was a life cycle assessment done by the third-party environmental engineering firm from Minnesota a couple of years ago that tracked the increase in organic matter in our land. And, you know, I talk about organic matter as though that was all there is. It's not. Well, the microbial activity, the ability to percolate water, all those are equally important, but organic matter is a pretty good tool, metric to use for improvement. The most exciting thing we got going on here now is that we are grazing solar voltaic arrays. We have a contract with a great company from Nashville, Silicon Ranch. We're grazing a 1,425 acre property. This is in addition to the 3,200 acres that is White Oak Pastures. We have the vegetation management contract on this 1,425 acres, 6 miles from here. We're using sheep and poultry to manage the vegetation instead of Roundup and string trimmers and mowers. And it offers a lot of promise. We actually get paid to graze, and I think it's going to offer a lot of benefit for us and the solar operator. And in addition to the 1,425 acres that we're currently grazing, they're building other arrays here. I think we'll have about 4,000 acres on the grazing contract in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. I mentioned earlier that in addition to producing the 10 species of meat and poultry, that we have other ancillary businesses. And the ancillary businesses are things like turning hides into wallets and pet chews, rawhide pet chews, desiccated organs for pets, lard and tallow, and just a whole soap and all sorts of those things. We endeavor to operate as a zero waste operation, and I think we're pretty close. Everything we try to market everything to its highest and best use, and even the what is considered to be packing plant waste, that would be eviscerate, gut fill, heads, feathers, is ground up. We have a big grinder, 75 horsepower electric motor grinding, and we make compost out of that. Our packing plant, our slaughterhouses generate about 9 tons a day, 5 days a week, of what's they call slaughterhouse waste. I consider it to be a nutrient stream. We compost it with peanut shells or wood chips and apply it back onto the farm. And it's just wonderful fertilizer, and it's been very contributory. You know, Brooke, if it's okay now, can we do some questions, see how that works? Is that okay? All right.
Let me unmute here. Will, we have a few questions. Folks missed the slides early on. And I know folks are really excited to see photos of your place. Could we start there?
Hey, Jenny, you start.
They're just beautiful. I can see them here. So if you want me to advance it, I can do that too.
Jenny, don't swing at it, and if that doesn't work, you can do it.
So what am I doing?
You get PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think folks would like to see all those beautiful photos. I know you talked about it all, but seeing the real thing.
Good.
It stops there. There we go.
Rick, if it doesn't advance, can you advance it? There you go.
It seems to be going now. It just got hung up for some reason.
Yeah.
And does it advance on its own?
Yes.
Okay.
Should be going.
Okay, it'll go. So maybe we just, Will, if you want to talk about what's in the photos here, folks can see it while it goes, and then we can go to Q&A.
Okay. So those are ducks, guineas, that's actually a savory meeting we had where on the right there was a cotton module builder we repurposed as a poultry house. That meeting we're having there is a savory Institute meeting. We're a savory hub for regenerative land management. Rabbits, baby guinea, or turkey actually. Big turkey. We have 15 beehives. We have a very talented beekeeper. Turkeys on the truck. With turkey manure on the truck as well. There's some of the soap and cream that they make out of towel. That's one of the houses. We got 6 southern rural houses here on the farm for guests, weekend guests. Turkey intensive here. That's a one-shot deal. We had one of those fun runs, and I think those people you see the ones. That's our order fulfillment center. It's very primitive 6 containers that we keep. We ship from UPS and FedEx. We have a restaurant on the farm. That was a picture of it. There's a ewe and a lamb. We cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's our prayer right there. Pray for plenty of good hard work to do and the strength to do it. We got a lady here that cleans up those skulls, and there's the bald-headed guy is me. We have a food truck. As I started saying, we cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. That's composting. Cowbirds. That's an eagle after my chickens. We have a real predation problem with eagles. There's a cafeteria. Rabbits. Brooke, why don't you ask a question? I'll just talk.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's see. For your animals that require some supplemental feed, like poultry or pigs, are you producing those grains on the farm? And if not, how do you look to make sure your feed streams also build soil health wherever they're produced?
So we don't feed any grain to the ruminants. We do feed a non-GMO purchased feed to the monogastrics, the pigs and poultry. We buy that feed. We plan to produce the feed, but we're just not to that point yet. There's several things on our to-do list that we hadn't got to yet. One is a feed mill. I think we're uniquely positioned to have friends and neighbors grow grain for us that we would that could mill and feed our monogastrics. We're not there yet. Another thing that's on the list is a hatchery. We buy one-day-old keats and chicks and ducklings and goslings and poults and brooder them. We don't have a hatchery yet either. So making our own feed is on the list, but we haven't got there yet.
Great. So I think just can you restate the size of your herd and flocks? How many animals do you have on the land on average at any given time?
Yeah, so as we say, 100,000 beating hearts. Of course, most of them's poultry. The cattle herd will be a little over 3,000 head. That varies. The calves are being born and calves are being slaughtered. We got the cattle are divided up into 3 herds. 3 herds rotating over 100 and some paddocks. So you can see there's a lot of movement. The 3 herds are a little over 1,000 mama cows that are winter calving. We turn the bulls in on them on February 15th, so the calves start coming about Thanksgiving. There's about 500 cows that are summer calving, and we turn the bulls out on them August 15th. So we've got 2 calf crops coming a year. And I used to have a very short calving window. I was putting together a truckload of lots, so I wanted all my calves to come in 60 days. So I bred for 60 days. Today we have a very long breeding season. I may leave the bulls in for 4 months, maybe 5 months. And that serves a purpose of, we slaughter calves 52 weeks a year. So I need calves coming all along and not all at one time. The third herd is the bull herd. And those are the calves that they're being finished and will be slaughtered. And the bull herd is literally a bull herd. I ceased castrating my cattle about 6 years ago. And it was I did it in an effort to gain a little higher rating with animal welfare. And it did that. But the real benefit came from the fact that I realized I was raising better bulls than I was buying. So I ceased to buy bulls. You know, when my great-grandfather and grandfather ran this farm, they saved their own heifers and their own bulls. It was a closed herd. My grandfather later in years, and my father started buying purebred bulls to, quote, improve, end quote, the herd. Then I did the same thing. But I always castrated my calves before they were 3 months old. Of course, I couldn't tell if it was a good animal or not so good animal at 3 months. But when I ceased to castrate, we slaughtered about 2 years old. I realized that I was raising excellent bulls, so I closed the herd again. So we're raising our own. We select the best bulls out of the 700 bull calves that are born here a year for breeding bulls.
Wonderful. I know folks on here are just so excited about the details behind the herd management and size there. So I have a couple more questions here, sort of more about the social and cultural changes you've seen in Bluffton through the years. So we have the Berry Center on the line here with us, and I know y'all are good friends with them. So they're saying hello and asking if you have talk a little bit more about your area of South Georgia and how it's changed from your youth and early adulthood to today, and what you've seen as in terms of attitudes changing as other farmers in the region see what you've been able to do there. Just share a little bit about that farmer network in your area.
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier that usually unintended consequences are unnoticed and unwanted. And the rebirth of Bluffton was an unintended consequence that has been a really, really beautiful thing. You know, I was born in 1954, and there was what we refer to as the brain drain all my life. You know, the A and B students moved and got good jobs, and us C and D students stayed and ran the farm. And you know, the quality of life in rural America rural towns became impoverished for the reasons I said earlier. The industrial commodity agriculture rendered rural communities irrelevant. They just didn't need them anymore. It was not an intentional impoverishment of rural areas. It just, nobody needed it. So when we changed the way we farm and brought all these wonderful, passionate, educated young people here, the town was relevant again. The town was needed. And so it grew back. You know, I mentioned we write checks for $100,000 every Friday, and a lot of that money stays here in town where previously it didn't. So it's developed again. Very, very proud of that unintended consequence. And you know, it's a shame because what's happened in Bluffton, Georgia, is inarguably a desired effect, and it was done by a C student with bank loans. You know, not a student with an endowment. What's happened here could happen in every rural community in the country, and I think we'd be better for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think a lot of judging from the comments we're seeing. A lot of people are hoping and dreaming similarly. Okay, so next question, and these might be a little more specific. Specifically about employees. Are your employees from the local community largely, or do you also have H2A or something else?
We don't have any H2As. We got, really, we kind of got, our employees kind of fall into two groups. And thank goodness it's two groups that are meshing well. There's half or so of our employees are local people that work here, that in many cases their dad worked here, and just good local folks. But about half our employees are very, very different. They are almost exclusively non-rural, very educated, sophisticated, passionate people that can't, they're here for the lifestyle. Most of them are, have been professional people that have just decided that they didn't want to be in the urban areas or cities and wanted this lifestyle. So they came here, and we understand up front that they're not going to be here forever, and it's fine. I've come to like the fact that people come and go. So we have a big contingent of that. We also have an internship program that is really kind of blown up on us. I didn't necessarily want an internship program, but we were inundated by people that wanted to come here and work, and people feel like I'll come there and I'll work for free. But I want to go and come as I see fit, and I can't run a business like that. And also I need to cover you under workers' comp. So we sat down and created a internship program that's on our website. You go to whiteoakpastures.com, you can see it. And we get about 25 applicants per quarter, 4 quarters a year, 4 3-month quarters a year. We accept about 6, so we can be really selective. And we've just got some great employees from that program. So.
Fantastic. So I have a couple more animal specific questions, and then I do want to get back around to talking about processing and things like that. So first, a question from Tony: what breeds of cattle do you have, and what are your primary selection criteria?
Good. So my great-grandfather brought a herd of cracker cattle here in 1866. And the cattle that we have today are descendants of those cracker cattle. It would have been a closed cracker cattle herd till my grandfather started bringing bulls in. And I suspect that between my grandfather and my father and me, we have had at least one of every breed of cattle that's ever been to Georgia on our farm. So we mongrelized the herd. You can see pictures of them there. You can see the mongrelization. I can see, Simmental, Brahman, Shorthorn. Most of the genetics in the herd would be Black Angus. And the reason for that is the Angus breed became so predominant over the last 20, 25 years that I could just buy Angus bulls quicker, easier than I could anything else. I feel like, so there's a lot of DNA out there, a lot of different animal genetics out there. And closing the herd, I feel like we're creating our own breed. That's how you create a breed of anything, whether it's a dog or cows. You line breed back upon itself. If that works good, it's called line breeding. If it doesn't work good, it's called interbreeding. And we'll see how this one works. The size of our herd, I think there's enough genetic diversity out there. I can do it for a long time, if not forever. The selection process you mentioned, I see the herd getting better. I'm saving my own bulls is definitely, it may come a point it's not the right thing to do anymore, but right now it is. I can see the animals moving in the direction I want them to, which is short, thick, muscular, masculine males, feminine females. The fact that and you know, my cattle are immune to every pathogen on my farm because they're like me. They've been here for generations. So, but it's just really working well for me now.
So related to livestock and cattle, do you have any comments on the meat differences between bulls versus steers on grass?
I get that question a lot. And, you know, I think that is highly situational. If you are grain feeding cattle with prime and choice as your target to go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, I think that probably bulls wouldn't work in that program. I don't know that, but that would be my suspicion. I am on a grass-fed program, and select is my target. And I've had, you know, we don't get product complaints on our meat. You know, we tell people up front, we try to be very clear that grass-fed beef is likely not going, if it's a New York strip steak, it's not going to be as tender as that grain-fed prime steak that you would get in a hotel steakhouse. It's just not. If that's what you want, then, you know, don't do me and you both a disservice and buy mine. But I have a very brisk beef business and not many complaints. So I guess we're doing something okay.
Great. So I am really curious about when you brought, in terms of the business growth and the scaling you've done, when did you integrate processing into the business model? What did that look like? What did it take to get that started? How did that grow over time? And sort of like, what were those challenges along the way? I know that processing is a huge bottleneck here in Kentucky. Access to processors, like even pre-pandemic, it was still an issue, and now it's even worse. So a lot of folks are seeing how if processing is integrated on farm, there's some opportunities there, but I'm sure there's some challenges too. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I'll tell you, yes. I'll tell you, I'm glad I built processing on my farm. It was a life-changing experience. I might preface it by saying, do not try this at home. But I never wanted to have a slaughterhouse. That was not in my plan. I did want to raise cattle and later livestock differently. And I started out with the business plan of using local slaughterhouses, their excess capacity, have them do it for me. And I did that for a while. And we would mixed reviews, mixed success, but it was okay. The problem is that my local processors ran out of capacity before they could do enough volume to make me profitable. You know, I would need to slaughter 12 cows this week, and they tell me you can't bring but 6, and it just, I was enjoying what I was doing, but I could not be profitable. So I took the plunge, and we actually spent about $7.5 million over just a few years putting in processing and further slaughter and further processing and other components of that side of the business. Now you're Kentucky, the folks in Marksbury, I believe, are in Kentucky, and they've been here before, and I visited their operation, and I think it's a really nice operation. They seem like great people.
Yeah, they're great partners for a lot of farmers, but they, like a lot of other processors, you know, are booked for the next year at this point. We have farmers in Kentucky that are, you know, going to processors 5 hours away outside of the state just to get something done, so they have product to sell.
Yeah, and remind me the company that the Barry Center's involved in that does the pasture beef, Rose Veal. Who's that?
Yeah. who processes that. I think it's Trackside, and they're on here, so they can drop it in the chat if that's changed or if I have that wrong. But I believe it's Trackside.
I would try that. That was the name I was looking for. I've heard very good. I don't know them. I've heard very good things about them.
Yeah, they're great partners as well. So there's a question related to processing. Do you process any animals from other local farmers? Do you offer processing services?
I do not. I only process my animals. Now I do have a producer group, my local folks that raise cattle for me. But they're my cattle. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't do any custom work.
Okay. So related to processing and sort of the growing that value chain for you, now that you've had a retail operation open in town for a few years, how has that been for you? Was that a good business decision? How has that growth been?
So the customer facing side of my business is local customer facing. It's kind of like my internship program. I didn't want to be in that business. It was thrust upon me. We are gracious Southern people. We like people, and we had a lot of visitors come, and they would have traveled from Atlanta or Tampa or wherever to get here to see what we do. And we didn't have time to fool with them. I mean, we would look at each other. Well, you show them around. I can't. I'm busy. You show them around. And that's no way to treat people. So we started having. One of my daughters came back. Her job was to be in charge of showing people around. And later we added a restaurant to feed our employees. We're feeding employees every day. We added a restaurant to feed the public. I just about got in trouble with the health department because I was feeding the public and didn't have, but we got straight. Later we added lodging, later we added the store. And we don't sell a lot of local people here at our store. The people here locally, my friends and neighbors and relatives, God bless them, I love them, but they're not necessarily my customer base. We ship most of our product goes shipped either to grocery or direct to consumers through FedEx and UPS. We do have a store. We do sell some.
Can you give us a sense of percentage? What percentage of your revenue is going in terms of the meat sales is through wholesale versus direct sale shipping?
Yeah. So we had the pandemic changed all that.
Right. Of course.
We had basically three markets. There was food service, there was grocery, and there was the direct to consumer online store sales. The pandemic wiped out the food service business. It just wasn't there anymore. And it has not recovered very much. The online sales exploded. It went through the roof, and our limited shipping center was overwhelmed. On an annualized basis, we could have done $8 or $10 million a year during the height of the panic of the pandemic. That's backed off soon now. We sell a little over $20 million total product a year for all three. That's all species, as well as the other ancillary businesses.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. Okay. Let's see. Where do we go here? Still so many questions. Okay, a specific question. When we were doing the tech check a week or so ago in those initial questions, I know you mentioned that vegetation management under the solar arrays contract, and that's really interesting. And we got a couple questions about that. One specifically, what challenges did you incur, both in terms of like developing that relationship and agreement, and then like logistical management of the livestock on that site? So if folks are interested, what should they have a heads up on in advance?
Sure. So we actually initiated this agreement we have with the solar operator. We reached out. They didn't hunt me. We hunted them. We reached out to them, invited them down, showed them what we do, showed them what we thought was the benefit of using our prescriptive grazing versus Roundup and string trimmers. And they bought into it, and we contracted to do this 1,425 acre property. You know, it's the biggest problem would be lack of infrastructure. You know, I like permanent fences when I can do it, and you know, you can't have permanent fences out in that array. There's a chain link fence all the way around it, but you got to use polywire. We remove them every day because that's what we do. That's what we believe in. But the lack of water infrastructure, fencing infrastructure is a little bit problematic. You know, we have an excellent herdsman, shepherd that sees about them, and he's got dogs and does a really good job moving them. It would be a little problematic because you got with all these panels trying to get on, but the dogs do a great job with that. There's some hoops to jump through. You know, we struggle to find insurance. You know, you got to Shell Oil Company is a parent company of this solar operator, and you know they're very buttoned down corporate, understandably, and they have requirements. And as a farmer, it's hard to get the insurance they wanted and all the other kinds of administrative hoops, but it wasn't debilitating. It just could have been easier. But I think that solar grazing is going to explode. I'll tell you this: the vice president of engineering for the company has become a good friend of mine. He and I have bemoaned the fact that these off-the-shelf panels they use will only work with sheep and poultry. They're not high enough or stout enough to use for cattle or goats. So we had decided to do some experimentation, both put some money in the pot and do a little experimentation on re-engineering some things. While we were planning that, we applied for, he learned of, and we applied for a Department of Energy grant. And we were funded, that research project was funded $1.77 million for us to do research on white oak pastures to re-engineer those panels so that cattle can graze on them. That's really exciting. You know, Americans consume about 1.1 pound of lamb per year. And we consume 40-something pounds of beef per year. So if we're going to do a heck of a lot of solar grazing, we really need to figure out how to put cattle up under it. And I'm a cow man.
Right. So is that research current right now? That's ongoing at this point?
That will start in I think June of 21.
Great. And
it's been approved, but we have not started.
So forthcoming, multi-year, folks can look forward to that. That's great.
It's a three-year research project.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So one question again about employees: is there an opportunity for profit sharing for employees?
You know, there's not. I just don't know how to do that. That's a little sophisticated for me, and it's. I'm not opposed to it. It's just that I really feel very strongly about keeping compensation equitable. And when you've got people making jelly and pickles and people feeding cows and people cutting meat and people running a store, it's very hard. Our accounting system is very complex. You know, we sell to each other, you know, to within the company, and it's just so difficult. I believe that compensation and contribution need to balance each other, and it's very hard for us to keep up with what the contribution is. We know if the company made money or not. You know, if our cattle department sells the cows to our red meat plant for too much money, then the cattle department shows a big profit and the red meat department shows a loss. And it's just, I'm not sophisticated enough to know how to do it. We do pay people, I think, well. I know what our average employee makes, and I know what the county average compensation is, and we're way above that.
So I think this is a great opportunity to talk about sort of that your overall corporation model and the individual businesses, and what your thinking was behind that, and then ultimately what your team and your family's thinking is that as those individual businesses have grown on. And I think what's really unique about your story is how much the business structure has changed, right? Through the decades from when you started till now. So can you share with us a little bit about those internal conversations and decision-making process and who's in charge, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I told you we grew the business from 3 employees, $1 million in live cattle sales to 20-something million and 176 employees in a 15 or so year period. And that's extraordinary growth. And it was hard. When I was the sole decision maker and ran the business very autonomously for a long time, and maybe too long. And it grew to the point that I had 50 people reporting to me, directly to me. And you just can't supervise that many people. I was talking to people all day long. I don't like talking to people much. So it needed some structure, and we went through a number of different renditions. But to fast forward to today, which is what I like, we got what I think is a really effective structure for us. There's 176 employees. There are 25 or 6 managers and 7 directors. We'll start from the top. The 7 directors who speak with equal voice are me, 2 daughters, 2 in-laws, and 2 non-family members. And we run the company. We meet in this building. This is the old one-room courthouse. It's my office. We meet in this building every Wednesday at 1:30, and we have an artillery, and it takes all afternoon. And we go through every situation we got, problem or opportunity, and we all vote on it. And it's a pretty collegiate group. We don't fight much. Everybody speaks with equal voice. It went from me running the whole thing to be me as one of 7. And there's a lot of reasons. A lot of benefits come from that. One is all 6 of the others are smarter than I am. And then the other one is I'm 66 years old, and there needs to be some continuity, a succession program. But those 7, and I'll tell you more about that if you want to know it, but those 7 supervise the 26, I think, managers. Every species has a manager. Every business has a manager. Each building has and a lot of those people are the non-rural, non-farm, educated, sophisticated people that come here to be part of this program. A lot of those 25 or 6 managers. And then the rest of the people report to them, and just got really good employees. I love our employees. So I'll tell you a little more about the directors. So 7 directors. I'm the livestock guy. One of the non-family members is the processing guy. He's got a master's degree in meat science from the University of Florida, and he's a real scientist. He's great. The other non-family member is our controller, brilliant woman that has got several graduate degrees and just anything that's accounting, insurance, HR, any administrative function, she handles it. Then one daughter manages marketing, online store, anything that's got to do with marketing and distribution, she handles it. another daughter house, anything consumer facing, the lodging, restaurant. We're building an RV park right now. I think we're gonna build a fuel station. All those things she handles. One in-law, son-in-law is anything we have a mechanic shop, a fence crew, a carpenter shop, wood shop, and all our buildings and equipment he's in charge of. And then the other in-law is any of the value-added products. Ancillary business, soap and honey and leather products and all that. That's the breakdown.
Yeah, wow. It's a lot of scaling and a lot of diversification over the years in terms of the business, for sure. I'm curious, a quick question about the value added part of the business. When did that part come online, and what percentage of the income is that for the company?
It's not, so it's fairly new. It's probably the newest. I guess we've been doing it 5 years. Time means so little to me. I read this short period of time, 5-ish years. It's not a big percentage of the business, but it's a very fast growing part of the business, especially as we go more direct to consumer. I like the fact that it pays homage to the animals. We use the things that we used to throw away, and that doesn't seem right to me. And then, the margins are good on it. If we can grow that business, we sell tracheas and penises and esophaguses and things that we used to throw away, or for pet treats, and we sell all of them we can produce. So I'm very pleased with that part of the business and optimistic about it.
So as the
Wait, don't look at the screen. I want you to just listen.
oh,
and tell me
someone's unmuted. Can you just hit mute, whoever that is? Okay, so I'm thinking specifically about processing. When you added that, you said total cost was upwards of $7 million. Is that what you said? So can you talk a little bit about like the financing for that? The discussions you had around that, was it all loans, or were there some opportunities for grants or low interest loans from in-state? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. So mostly bank loans is the quick answer to that part of the question. And I didn't do a real good job. I was blessed. I inherited 1,000 acres of land, a good herd of cows with no debt. And when I was, until I was 30-something years old, I'd never borrowed a penny in my life. I'd never even financed a pickup truck. So I didn't know much about the finance side of it, and didn't do a real good job. It was, you could not have done today what I did back then. It was good old boy credit, collateral-based credit. I had no business plan. I had no cash flow projections. I just had 1,000 acres of land that I was willing to put on the line to get the money. And we didn't borrow it all one day. We borrowed the $7.5 million over a probably 6-year period, something like that. I borrowed, it was almost all bank financing. Whole Foods Market was buying a lot of stuff from me in that time. Still do buy some stuff from us. And we borrowed about $500,000 from them on a loan program they had, and we paid them back. There was one Georgia that we borrowed, which was what we did with tobacco money in the state, and they loaned me $400 and something thousand, but most of it was just local bank financing.
Great, thanks for that. So folks, we are coming up on the end of our time with Will. I have 2 more very specific production questions, and then one last question just to close it up. But if anyone has a burning question you didn't get asked, now's the time. If we can fit it in, we will. If not, we'll be sure to follow up with what we can get from Will after the fact. So a very specific question about pigs. What breeds of hogs do you find do better in your model than others? What can we learn there in terms of breed choice?
So we have 2 droves of hogs. We've got Iberian pigs of the descendants of 24 gilts and 6 boars that we imported from Spain They are really real fatty hogs. We used to call them lard type hogs back in the day. This for further processing for things like charcuterie. Then we've got the heritage hogs that we raise for pork, fresh pork, pork chops, bacon, ham. That breeds of there are Berkshire, Old Spot, and Tamworth. And we, they're no longer purebred. I bought purebred hogs, and we select and select and select.
Great. And then specific, do you have water in each paddock? What's your watering infrastructure look like?
Well, that is a really good question. I told you I have 3 really big herds, and used to, before I adapted this new way of grazing, or new to me way of grazing, I had a bunch of herds of cows, a bunch of little bitty herds of cows, same number. But I had old cows that I was nursing along in one herd, and young heifers I was developing, and cows that had too much Brahman influence, and I was trying to breed that out. And just a bunch of little bitty herds. I couldn't rotate them much because I had so many herds and so few paddocks. And when I changed up and put them together, I had big herds. I loved what it did for the land. I mean, when I'm talking about hard impact and long recovery, and just produced so much more forage, so much better. But the downside is I was struck by how much more water infrastructure I needed. Cattle are prey animals, and cattle are like women in a bar. They don't go and use the bathroom one at a time. They all go at one time. And when that happens with big herds, you have to have so much water capacity, both flow and capacity storage and linear feet for them to drink. So they're very expensive. We put in these big water stations, and it may cost $20,000 to a big water station to get it fenced and plumbed, enough volume there. So you can't have 100 and something of those. So you really got to be strategic about placing them, like wagon wheeling off from them, so you can grade. You have 7, 8 paddocks all drinking in the same water station. So that, we've tried a lot of different renditions, designs of it, and it's expensive. I kind of like those huge tires that we get in from out west somewhere. That if you can afford it, that's what we like.
That's your preferred. Yeah, that's great. That was part 2 of the question. So thanks for doing that. Okay, in terms of your employees, it looks like you have a range of ages, but also diverse employees, Black employees, folks of color working. So there's a specific question: how do you actively recruit for this diversity? Is it just a product of who's interested, or are you being really precise in terms of how you're reaching out about job opportunities, or where you're advertising about your job opportunities?
Well, the diversity is a real thrust of our, especially my daughter, Jenny. The internship program, which I've already told you about, I didn't tell you that we charge $1,500 to intern here, but then we pay you $8 an hour. And she has waived the $1,500 for people of color to try to. Everybody signed up for it was white. So she's waived it, gives scholarships to accommodate that. One of my daughters is gay, and this has become kind of a gay mecca. And I often sit down at a table and say, I'm the only heterosexual person at this table. And that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. So a lot of things have changed. I mentioned to you that I've had a PhD in organic chemistry work here in our chicken poultry department. A lot of educated people that choose to come here, and it's incredible. The brain drain, it's almost like the brain drain is reversed.
That's great. That's what we all need. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, so I want to share with you, Will, because I'm not sure if you're seeing the chat. People have just really enjoyed seeing all your photos. They're finding your story and what you've been able to do there. Just a huge inspiration. I've gotten private text messages and emails I see saying all this. So, so just want to share like the immense gratitude that's happening both publicly in the chat and back here on the back end. So thank you for sharing so much. To close it out, I'd like to ask, and this is from a couple people who've asked, I'm sort of synthesizing here, is taking the 2021, Will, what you know now, right? And thinking about the challenges and the hurdles you've overcome in the past few decades, right? What do we need to know for those of us who are working to build these more integrated value chains in our own communities? What do we need to keep an eye out for in terms of those major challenges and keeping hope for the opportunity side of the spectrum? I know you were talking about those challenges and opportunities when you sit down as a board, right? And I think that's a really important balance, and being able to see those opportunities is what makes the growth and that integration possible. So, what's your parting advice? What do we avoid, and what are those opportunities we keep looking for?
Well, the thing that I would really hope people would avoid is something I mentioned earlier, and it doesn't have anything to do with 2021. It's just got to do with the way we all are. Most of us who fall in love with this production model really embrace the production side, really embrace what goes on in the pasture. And I've seen a lot of really good people, really smart people, really financially strong people go broke doing a great job on the production model, but not being able to turn it into a monetizable product, and then not finding the market that would extract the money back so you can pump it back through again. It just happens all the time. Please don't do that. Please don't just learn how to regeneratively farm. Learn how to make it monetizable and know where you're going to go with it. That's so important. And they're the hard part. As far as the bright spots, I think you mentioned, I don't know exactly how you said it, but you know, there's more people talking about how their food's produced than there has ever been in my lifetime, and I'm pretty old. So that's heartening. The counter to that is greenwashing by big multinational food companies, which is I loathe, and it's the bane of my existence. And we could talk all day about that. In fact, I'd love to talk to you all day about that. But you know, I don't know whether the momentum is there for people to change the food production system they support. A lot of resources are put into tricking those people into buying the same old renamed industrial food that they've been buying. And I don't know which good or evil is going to triumph there. I don't know that.
So we all do our part to make sure everyone knows their farmer and knows where their food's coming from and how it's grown and raised. Yeah. Well, Will, thank you so much for being with us today. We're just so grateful for all the incredible work you've done through the years and for your generosity being here today and answering all these questions and sharing your story with us. You're an inspiration, and we wish you and your team all the best as you continue.
That's a pretty low bar for inspiration, but I've enjoyed being here with you.
It's a whole group. It's a virtual room full of farmers. They want nothing more than to hear from another farmer. So it's absolutely perfect. So big thanks to you, and thank you, Jenny, if you're listening, for working on the tech and coordinating everything for us. Way to go! Y'all are doing awesome there. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
So we're gonna